Hi, welcome my channel. Ever trusted someone with your whole heart, only to be betrayed? But what if she turns the tables in the most genius way? This is a story of betrayal, strength, and sweet revenge, and you won't want to miss it. Stay tuned. Emma sat quietly on the couch, sipping her tea as she heard the unmistakable sound of a key turning in the lock. The door swung open, and in walked Liam, grinning like a man who thought he'd conquered the world. He was dressed in a crisp designer suit, sunglasses still perched on his head despite the dim apartment lighting. With a dramatic flourish, he tossed a sleek duffel bag onto the floor, its surface gleaming with high-end logos that screamed money she knew he didn't have. Well, thanks for the upgrade, babe, Liam said smugly, slipping off his jacket and casually draping it over a chair. Dubai was next level. You wouldn't believe the view from the penthouse suite. Emma forced a small smile, her heart pounding but her face calm. She watched as he paraded around the room, pulling out flashy watches and gadgets, laying them out like trophies from some victorious hunt. You really outdid yourself with that card, he added with a wink, oblivious to the storm brewing behind Emma's steady gaze. She studied him, noticing how much he was enjoying himself, how completely unaware he was that his entire trip had been monitored. Every transaction flagged, every step documented. Emma's fingers grazed her phone resting on the table, knowing Sophia and Agent Ramirez were just a message away. Still, she said nothing, not yet. Instead, she let a small chuckle escape, which made Liam pause and glance at her suspiciously. "What's so funny?" he asked. Frowning, Emma leaned back, taking another slow sip of tea. "Oh, Liam," she said softly, a mysterious smile playing at her lips. "You have no idea what you've done." It had been a quiet night when Liam made his move, or so he thought. Emma had gone to bed early after a long day managing a financial fraud investigation for one of the biggest banks in New York. She remembered hearing him pace around downstairs, but she thought little of it at the time. Now, piecing together the clues, she could see everything clearly. While she slept, Liam had crept into her home office, careful not to wake her. She pictured him sitting at her desk, using her work laptop, the same one she used to run high-level fraud simulations for corporate clients. What he didn't realize was that the credit card he found wasn't real, it was a decoy tied to Emma's internal fraud detection system, a tool she used to test security breaches and employee vigilance. It was linked to instant alerts sent directly to authorities and her private network of investigators. But Liam, blinded by greed, had no clue. He had carefully copied down every number, expiration date, and CVV code, even taking photos on his phone for later. Emma recalled waking up the next morning to a flood of notifications, transactions from luxury stores, airline tickets to Dubai, and hotel bookings she never made. Her stomach had dropped, but only for a moment. As soon as she saw the card used, she knew exactly who was behind it, and how much trouble he was in. Instead of confronting him right away, she decided to play the long game. If Liam wanted to act like a criminal, she would make sure he was treated like one. The morning after the alerts hit her phone, Emma sat at her kitchen table, her fingers drumming lightly on the surface as she stared at her phone screen. The list of transactions kept growing: first-class flights, diamond-studded watches, designer suits, and hotel suites that cost more per night than most people's monthly rent. She took a deep breath, then dialed Sophia, her longtime friend and trusted lawyer. "You are not going to believe what Liam did," Emma said as soon as Sophia answered. Within minutes, Emma was recounting the entire situation, from Liam's late-night theft to the mounting evidence she already had in hand. Sophia didn't even bother hiding her amusement. "Wait, let me get this straight. He used your fraud trap card to go on a spending spree?" she said between chuckles. That idiot basically walked into a fully armed security net. But as much as Sophia laughed, she was serious about what had to happen next. "Emma, we need to let him keep digging his own grave. The bigger the hole he makes, the easier it'll be to bury him legally." Sophia promised to get in touch with Agent Ramirez, a federal investigator specializing in financial crimes, to make sure all the data was captured in real time. Later that day, Emma had a conference call with Agent Ramirez, who agreed that letting Liam continue was the best move. "The more evidence, the better," he said firmly. We'll monitor every charge, and once he lands back in New York, we'll be ready." As Emma hung up, she felt a new sense of control. For the first time in a long while, she wasn't the one being fooled, she was the one setting the trap. Over the next several days, Emma watched in calculated silence as Liam's fantasy life played out in real time, one fraudulent transaction after another lighting up her phone like a Christmas tree. There was something both painful and empowering about seeing the alerts roll in: $12 for a diamond-studded Rolex, $5,500 for a private yacht dinner cruise in Dubai Marina, $8 for a luxury suite overlooking the city skyline. Every time a notification popped up, Emma could almost picture Liam grinning to himself, thinking he'd finally won, that he'd outsmarted her. But what he didn't know was every single charge was being flagged, recorded, and tracked by authorities, with timestamps, locations, and surveillance data being quietly gathered behind the scenes. Sitting alone in her apartment, Emma felt a strange mixture of betrayal and resolve. Part of her still couldn't believe Liam would stoop so low, but deep down, another part of her wasn't surprised. After all, this wasn't the first time Liam had shown his selfishness. For years, she had been the one holding their lives together, working long hours as a fraud analyst, paying the bills, and supporting Liam's endless stream of failed business ventures. She had ignored the red flags, the late nights out, the vague excuses about money, the secretive phone calls. But now, there was no denying who he truly was. Watching the fraud alerts pile up, Emma realized she wasn't just seeing Liam's betrayal, she was seeing his undoing. And this time, she wouldn't be the one left to clean up the mess. By the time Liam swaggered back into their apartment, tan from the Dubai sun and arms loaded with designer bags, Emma was ready. She sat calmly at the kitchen counter, pretending to scroll on her phone as he kicked off his expensive leather shoes and tossed his jacket over a chair, as if he hadn't just blown through tens of thousands of stolen dollars. "You would not believe the shopping over there, babe," Liam said, grinning ear to ear as he unzipped a bag and pulled out a glittering watch, holding it up like a prize. "I mean, come on, you always say we should live a little, right? Consider this, our little upgrade." Emma forced a tight smile, her heart pounding in her chest but her face giving away nothing. "Looks like you had fun," she said smoothly, leaning against the counter with her arms crossed. Liam barely looked up, too busy admiring his reflection in the sleek new sunglasses he'd bought. "Fun? It was epic. First class all the way. You should have seen the suite, you really went all out with that card." Emma raised an eyebrow. "Did I?" she asked, her voice calm but sharp. Liam finally paused, glancing at her, maybe catching the edge in her tone. "I mean, yeah," he said, faltering slightly. "Come on, Emma, lighten up. You've been working so hard, I thought you'd appreciate me taking care of things for once." Emma almost laughed at the audacity. But instead, she reached casually for her phone, secretly tapping record as she set it on the counter. "Tell me more," she said, her voice cool. Liam, oblivious, launched into a full-blown account of his lavish trip, practically confessing with every word. And as he bragged, Emma smiled to herself, knowing every second of his arrogance was being captured, and it was all she needed to bring him down. The next morning, Emma sat across from Sophia in her sleek downtown office, sunlight streaming through the glass windows as they reviewed the growing mountain of evidence. Sophia scrolled through Emma's phone, pausing at the recorded conversation with Liam, her eyebrows arching higher with every word he carelessly bragged. "He really said all this?" Sophia asked, half amused, half incredulous. Emma nodded, her hands wrapped around a cup of coffee, feeling steadier than she had in weeks. "Every word. He didn't even hesitate." Sophia leaned back in her chair, letting out a low whistle. "Well, this makes our job a lot easier. We've got the credit card fraud alerts, time-stamped transactions, and now a full confession." He walked himself right into this. A soft ping from Sophia's laptop drew their attention, an update from Agent Ramirez. "Looks like Ramirez has tracked every transaction to specific locations," Sophia added, reading over the agent's message. "We've got camera footage from at least 3 of the stores Liam hit, and hotel check-in logs to match the charges. It's airtight." Emma felt a small but growing sense of power. For so long, Liam had made her feel trapped, emotionally, financially, but now the walls were closing in on him. Not her. When do we move? Emma asked, her voice calm, determined. Sophia smiled, sharp and confident. Agent Ramirez says the team is ready whenever you give the word. Best strategy? Let him keep thinking he got away with it for just a little longer. The more comfortable he feels, the less chance he'll see it coming. Emma nodded, a flicker of satisfaction in her eyes. Then let's wait. I want him to fall right into his own trap. It was almost surreal how ordinary everything seemed on the day it happened. Liam lounged on the couch, scrolling through his phone as though he didn't have a care in the world. Emma watched him from across the room, her heart pounding with anticipation, though she kept her face unreadable. She knew this was the calm before the storm, and today was the day. A sharp knock echoed through the apartment, making Liam glance up lazily. You expecting someone? He asked, not even bothering to get up. Maybe, Emma replied, her voice smooth, controlled. She walked to the door and opened it to reveal Agent Ramirez flanked by 2 uniformed officers. All serious and composed. Good afternoon, Ms. Parker. Ramirez greeted her politely, before shifting his focus to Liam. Is Mr. Liam Parker home? Liam sat up straighter, his eyes narrowing with confusion. Yeah, that's me, he said, trying to sound casual. Ramirez stepped forward, holding out a badge. Mr. Parker, you are under investigation for multiple counts of credit card fraud and unauthorized use of financial accounts. We'd like you to come with us for questioning. Liam's jaw dropped, color draining from his face. What? No. This is some mistake. He stammered, glancing wildly at Emma. Tell them, Emma, this isn't what it looks like. Emma folded her arms, tilting her head slightly. Isn't it? She said quietly, meeting his panicked gaze, as the officers began reading Liam his rights, cuffing his wrists. He continued to plead. Emma, you can't do this to me. You're my wife. She stood firm, her eyes cold. And you stole from me. As they led Liam out the door, still protesting, Emma felt a wave of calm wash over her, for the first time in years. She was free. The apartment felt eerily quiet after Liam was gone. But instead of emptiness, Emma felt a strange sense of peace settling over her. She sat at the kitchen table, scrolling through her emails when a message from Agent Ramirez popped up, updating her on Liam's status. He had been booked and questioned for hours. And predictably, he was already trying to spin the story, claiming he thought Emma had given him permission to use the card. That it was a misunderstanding. Emma couldn't help but shake her head. Of course he would, she muttered to herself. Later that afternoon, she met Sophia at a nearby cafe, the soft hum of conversation around them feeling like a normalcy Emma hadn't experienced in weeks. He's sticking to his story. Huh? Sophia asked, stirring her coffee with a smirk. Emma nodded. Yeah, trying to play the victim. Like I set him up. Sophia smiled knowingly. Let him try. Between the fraud alerts, the purchase records, and that lovely confession you recorded, there's no way out for him. Emma let out a long breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Ramirez said they're moving forward with charges, multiple counts of fraud, identity theft, and unauthorized use of a financial account. He's facing serious consequences. Sophia leaned in, her voice softer. How are you holding up? For a moment, Emma was quiet, staring out the window. Honestly, I thought I'd feel worse. But I don't. I feel relieved, like I've been carrying this weight for years. And now it's finally gone. Sophia gave her a proud smile. You did the right thing. Emma, you took your life back. And as Emma sipped her coffee, watching the world go by, she knew this was just the beginning of her freedom, and Liam was finally facing the price of his betrayal. 2 weeks later, the divorce papers arrived, sealed in a plain envelope that felt deceptively small for something so monumental. Emma sat quietly at her kitchen table, the same spot where she had once sat, worried about bills while Liam made empty promises. Now, as she carefully opened the envelope and scanned the words, finalized and irrevocable, a wave of calm washed over her. It was done. The marriage that had drained her for years was officially over. Emma leaned back in her chair, exhaling slowly, letting the finality of it sink in. Later that day, Rachel, her best friend, stopped by, carrying a bottle of champagne and a bag of takeout from Emma's favorite Thai place. To new beginnings. Rachel grinned, raising her glass as they sat on Emma's couch, now free of Liam's clutter. And to never settling for less than you deserve, Emma added, clinking her glass against Rachel's with a smile that, for the first time in years, felt genuine. After dinner, Emma walked through her apartment, making mental notes of what she wanted to change: new curtains, fresh paint, maybe even new furniture to replace the things that reminded her of Liam. She was determined to make this space truly her own. As she stood by the window, watching the city lights flicker in the distance, Emma felt something she hadn't in a long time: hope. For the first time, her life was hers alone. And she was ready to start writing a new chapter, one that no longer involved carrying someone else's weight. In the weeks that followed, news of Liam's arrest and fraud charges spread fast, especially among their mutual friends and acquaintances. Emma started receiving messages, some from friends expressing shock and support, others from people who had always quietly suspected that Liam wasn't what he seemed. Through the grapevine, Emma learned that Liam's life was unraveling quickly. The designer suits, the luxury watches, and all the flashy gadgets he had flaunted were now confiscated as part of the investigation. His accounts were frozen, and any job prospects disappeared as soon as employers heard about the fraud charges. Word got back to Emma that Liam had moved back in with his parents. A far cry from the glamorous image he had tried to maintain. His so-called friends, especially the ones who had been happy to party with him on her stolen dime, vanished as soon as trouble hit. He was on his own, and Emma couldn't bring herself to feel sorry for him. A part of her was amazed that he still hadn't taken responsibility. One mutual acquaintance even told her that Liam was still insisting it was all a misunderstanding, and blaming Emma for setting him up. Emma just shook her head at that. He had set himself up with his arrogance, his lies, and his betrayal, and now, he was paying the price. For the first time in years, Emma realized his problems were no longer her burden to carry. She was finally free from the chaos he had brought into her life, and she didn't intend to look back. A month later, Emma sat on her balcony, a glass of wine in hand, watching the sunset paint the sky in soft shades of orange and pink. The city lights began to flicker on below, but for the first time in years, the world felt calm and full of possibility. She looked around her apartment, now fully redecorated. Light, airy curtains replaced the heavy ones Liam insisted on. Colorful throw pillows she had always wanted but never bought, and walls now painted in a soft shade of blue that brought her peace. It was her space now, a reflection of herself, free from Liam's shadow. As she sipped her wine, Emma thought about everything she had been through, the betrayal, the heartbreak, the anger, and realized she felt none of it anymore. What she felt was strength. She had faced what many would crumble under and had come out standing taller than before. I carried us for so long, she whispered to herself, but now, I only carry me. The old Emma, the one who always compromised, who ignored the red flags and made excuses for Liam, was gone. In her place stood a woman who knew her worth, who had learned to trust her instincts and set boundaries. She had been afraid to imagine life without him, but now she saw clearly, life without him was better, brighter, and fully her own. Emma smiled, raising her glass to the fading light. Here's to me, she said softly. Here's to new beginnings, to never settling, and to always choosing myself first. For the first time in years, the future felt wide open, and she was ready to step into it on her own terms, stronger. The story teaches an important lesson about self-worth, boundaries, and empowerment. Emma's journey shows that trust should never blind us to red flags, and that even the deepest betrayals can become turning points for growth. By standing up for herself and refusing to be manipulated, Emma learns to value her independence and strength. The story reminds us that walking away from toxic relationships isn't a failure, but an act of courage, a step toward reclaiming our lives. Ultimately, true freedom comes from recognizing your own power and choosing yourself over those who take advantage.